Welcome, everyone, to These Sci-Fi Guys. We are here today talking about a different movie, just like we did last time. Anyway, joining with me is Chad and John again, as always. All right, this week's movie was here. Let me pull this up on the screen. Buckaroo Banzai, right? A total B movie from the 1980s. I actually remember seeing this movie not in the theaters, but I remember seeing it on TV all the time. And what did y'all think? Let's just put it that way. Let's just start because I know every one of these cannot be, Star Wars or these really deep message or deep thinking movies. What did y'all think of this B movie?
Well, let's see here. It calls it B movie for a reason. But I really enjoyed the movie, especially all that with the actors in there. Especially seeing them like starting off. They got to start somewhere. But I especially love. I mean, it cracked me up seeing the aliens run with their hands up, going like they are in the Thriller song. Thriller. But I like Buckaroo Banzai. He's always a serious. You see him doing doctor, and he goes to a car test pilot, and he's talking to the Secretary of State. He's all over. He's like the main guy in charge. But then, where was the president at?
Yeah, he's like James Bond on steroids
Yeah.
and was super smart. you know.
Absolutely.
So,
I
John,
mean,
just what's your first impression?
as just a youngin on this team, I enjoyed it thoroughly. It was very entertaining. I think that's where I have to stop for a second, but it was definitely entertaining. I give it that all day. I definitely questioned a lot of choices we made in this film. I questioned the storyline for a hot minute. I mean, it took me an hour to finally be like, "Oh, this is where all the dots are starting to connect." Great. But I mean, overall, it was enjoyable. I'll give it that. It was entertaining and enjoyable, but definitely crazy.
Let me give you just a bit of background on this movie. I actually got an interview I read here from the writer, W.D. Writer. Yeah, Writer. His name is Writer, and he's a writer. At least that's how I'm pronouncing it. Maybe it's wrong, but David Bagelman was the producer, and the writer and the producer were like this all the time. I mean, the producer basically just said, "You want to make the movie? Fine, make the movie. I don't care." I mean, it was totally I don't care, except for the last scene. The very last scene, after they did all their stuff, he says, "I can't end it on a kiss. We need something else." So that's why they had the whole montage of everyone walking down that doohickey, whatever it was. I can't even think what it's called. And the funny thing, they actually did not have any of the music. All that was done in post production. Um, the music they were walking to was Billy Joel's "Uptown Girl." So that was the step that they were doing to keep in step with everything. And he said it was pretty funny hearing it echo around everywhere, but everyone kept in step, and they did it like in one take. I mean, it was pretty funny. So, okay, I already mentioned it. Let's go ahead and let's just rip the band-aid off, right? Your wife dies. I don't know how, but your wife dies. And then all of a sudden you find out that she has a twin sister. You instantly fall in love? I mean, really? Yeah. What did y'all think of that?
Yeah, I don't think there's a chance. I mean, it's one thing to find someone that looks like your old wife, but I mean, like, personalities are completely different, lifestyle would be completely different. I don't think there's any way it's immediate love. But then again, knowing and working with a lot of people with trauma can cause people to do pretty crazy things. So, I mean, I think the trauma might cause some of that wackiness and that instant love, but I definitely don't think it would ever last past a couple of days of like, oh, you look like my wife that died. I definitely don't think that could happen for me. That was pretty out there to me.
Yeah. Yeah. That was way out in the left field, and to me is that's probably was not going for that, but it went there, and I couldn't do it. no matter how the the twin looks just like my wife. I couldn't do it. That to me that's a line I would never cross.
Yeah, I mean, I know both of your wives, so no, I don't see it happening. I mean, one, I know you guys, plus I know your spouses, and I just can't see. Oh, okay, she looks just like her, talks just like her. She must be just like her. I mean, come on, no, no, no one is going to be
No.
just like your spouse. I mean, you end up
I mean,
getting.
look,
I
my,
I
my
mean,
wife would come from the grave to kill me over that choice. So
okay. I mean, I can see that. Yes, I can see that. I mean, I've known twins. I mean, when I was growing up, there was a I guess you call it, what do you call it, a set of twins or twin, whatever. They were good. They were both good friends of mine, but I could tell the difference all the time. I mean, so many people were like, "Well, which one's which?" And I'm like, "Well, this is Emily. That's Eleanor." I mean, how do you not know that? And uh but I mean, I'm sure it's the same way. With him going, "Well, Peggy, no, it's Penny. Well, Peggy, well, it's Penny." I mean, I don't know. Okay, let's go on. All right, so this movie has become a cult classic. All right, it's supposedly, I'll just say that, supposedly a cult classic. It's on the cult classic list. Let's put it that way. Why do you think movies become cult classics, especially B movies? And let's just throw this one. This movie. I mean, do you think it was just because of all the actors they had, or I mean, the story was out there? So, what do you think? How about you, John? You start us off.
I mean, I think with cult classics in general, it definitely comes down to almost all of them feel wacky in some way. I think that wackiness and absurdity is just part of what makes people look back and be like, haha, look at this great thing from this decade. When in reality, they weren't great then or now. And I think B-rated films just kind of have that vibe to them. I mean, they just are that. They're meant to be a little wacky. They didn't have high budgets, but I think that's what makes people fall in love with them. Is just like, well, look at what they thought would be creative on a low budget film back in the day. And now, in particular, with this film, I definitely think the cast helps a lot because of a lot of the actors in there that would later be famous for other sci-fi films and just other films in general. I mean, it's easily going to become a classic in the sense that, well, you had this what would become what would have been a star-studded cast all together in one film. Well, people are going to look back at that and be like, oh, well, the film may not have been great, but it's great to see all these people in it in a different way. So I think that's why this movie became a cult classic. But overall, I think cult classics just happen because of the sheer wackiness and the absurdity and the reaching out of what stories become. So that's where I stand on it.
Yeah, I agree with John on that. It's just the storyline got it's made it almost like a cult classic. It's just far out there. Now with the star-studded as actors they had, I think that's what held it in. But it to me is on, I lean both ways. It was the cast. Oh, let's. I know who they is. They've been at, like Jeff Goldblum. You seen him in Jurassic Park. You seen him in Independence Day, and then you go look at the Banzai. He was in RoboCop. That to me is. I think that's everybody's pointing down towards that film. That's what probably made it a cult classic. But the storyline probably what is number one that made it a cult classic.
Yeah, I can see that. One of the things, I think that this movie's particular, why it became, is so much was used from this movie in Back to the Future.
Hmm.
The actual the triangle shape of his overthruster is what ended up later becoming,
Flux
the flux
capacitor.
capacitor. I mean, and then having Floyd as Doc Martin, Doc, and Back to the Future, and he was an alien in this one. So, uh, you know, just things like that. I mean, it's um, I don't know. I had to throw a B movie in here. I remember growing up with it. The effects, as I know, John is an effects guy. He loves anything with special effects. I mean, that's really. But all right, I know this wasn't a question I asked you guys, sent y'all, but what I'm almost afraid to ask this because I'm laughing as I'm doing it. The bubble wrap glasses that they had to wear around their face so they could go ahead and see the hologram. I mean, were those things absurd or what? Or you don't even remember them? They was just that
I
bad.
I remember it, and I laughed when I saw it. I'm like, what? It's, so the guy brought in that package a hologram with like something red, like looks like plexiglass to me, but and then you have a bubble wrap that almost looks like a eyes and make it look like a reptile.
Little eyes that are just cut out of the bubble wrap.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm like, well, you just could have just gave glasses and made it.
yeah.
But I laughed, almost laughed, and kept laughing when I saw it again. I'm like, yeah,
Listen, we can talk about that one specific case, but that's like 90% of the movie to me in terms of
Yeah.
effects.
I mean, there are so many things that in this movie that I mean, I kept like, okay, one, obviously this movie would not be around today to have a 10-year-old child with a rifle, who was a good shot. If I remember right, he
yeah,
was the first one that shot and took out one of the aliens. Uh, to have a president who is basically immobile, that's stuck in bed, which of course that made no sense in any part of the storyline. I mean, you could have just had him sitting in a chair just talking to you, but having him in that whole contraption just again didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Um, so okay, did y'all enjoy? I mean, you said you enjoyed it. I mean, would you all want to see more cult classics eventually? I mean, obviously not every episode because then YouTube would probably ban us. But I mean, just every so often, I'll throw one in there that I remember from the '80s or '70s. So
yeah. I think I got
Well,
one.
see, I even had the world open up to be of Mystery Science Theater. I
oh,
mean,
Mystery
listen,
Theaters,
I
yes,
think it's okay to throw one in every now and then. So
yeah.
I'm down for sure.
Well, all right. There was so many characters. Okay, or let me phrase that: so many actors and characters. Uh, who was your favorite and who was your least favorite? All right, let's start with you, Chad.
I I gotta go with Banzai. I like RoboCop. I liked him, but my least favorite is John Lithgow. I only thing I like him in is when runs over Bigfoot, and that's about it. Other than that, Banzai was probably my favorite just because he was just the super 007 just in this movie. He's smart and he knows everything.
For me, it would definitely be Dr. Amelia. Just from when I first saw him on screen to the very end, sheer absurdity, sheer fun. Just oh, he's crazy. No, he's a mad scientist. No, he's an alien. No, he's all of the above. He's just kind of there. He's just every little piece of it. But just the simple effect of having his hair be so crazy and the wild eyes that he's able to encapsulate from the acting standpoint sold him for me. Absolutely.
Okay, well, my favorite character. It's funny. It was Perfect Tommy. I thought he was just great. That bleached white hair. With the shirt just opened up, showing his abs and his six pack. I don't know. Just I got a kick out of Perfect Tommy. I thought he was pretty cool. Of course, there wasn't very many women in this movie. There was Penny, and that was about it. So okay, let's keep going here. Let's see here. Okay, so this movie, the New Jersey, basically, he said, when he was doing all of his research, that okay, Orson Welles' War of the Worlds really happened with these guys, and but he changed it to Mars is attacking, and what did y'all think about that? I mean, uh, do you think that that premise could be feasible, that people would say, oh, that really happened, but and then just kind of change it up a little bit? John, what do you think?
I mean, honestly, looking at the whole situation and the way this film used it, I'm honestly surprised that more sci-fi films in general haven't at least mentioned it as kind of a like one-off cameo slash Easter egg, something just to bring up classic sci-fi writing, because it is really a simple premise. Like, oh, the aliens just kidnapped him and made him change his story. Like, I honestly see that premise working both in a sci-fi sense and like where if some conspiracy theorist in the real world even wanted to take hold of it, I think they definitely could. Um, but overall, I think it's a very feasible idea to use in sci-fi. Like, I'm genuinely surprised after seeing this and the way they use it. I mean, I could see where Men in Black could have used it. I can see where really a lot of films that have just become very popular over the years at least could have mentioned it as a one-off. Like, oh yeah, I remember when this happened in 1938. But shockingly, they haven't.
Oh yeah, I mean, just think about Independence Day. They could have just thrown that in there or something. So, Chad, what do you think?
I agree with John. It's to me is they could have used any sci-fi film, like Man in Black, Independence Day, even this Mars Attacks. Now that would have been real funny to do it in Mars Attacks because Mars attacked. But in real world, yeah, you probably can see somebody do it. Conspiracy. There's a lot of conspiracy out there on it. So there, who said this? Not somebody out there thinking, hey, that the War of the Worlds, that broadcast really happened. It is real. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. And oh, by the way, Mars Attacks is on my list of ones that we're going to watch eventually.
Sorry.
I was going through my list. I was making a list like, okay, and I'm like, oh, we got to do Mars Attacks. That was so. It's a B movie, but it's pretty funny with all
Yeah.
the different actors in that one too. So we're not gonna be as long on this one as as some of the other ones. So okay, at the end of the movie, it actually says, hey, Buckaroo Banzai will return in Buckaroo Banzai against the Crime League. That movie obviously was never made. All right. What do you guys, if you had the opportunity, what would you make that movie about? Who wants to go first? Going
Yeah, I'll take.
once?
I'll take
Okay,
it.
Chad.
So Crime League. I mean, come on. It's. I would have kind of made it farther where this the Planet 10, the guys they beat this time. They're it's coming back with figured out. Oh, here's a bigger, badder one that's coming in. So he's got to defend the Earth or do the same thing with trying to do the. And I'll probably change it up where they meet him halfway in space and come and ended up on Earth fighting. Other than that, that's how I would see them doing it to kind of keep the same concept going.
I mean, I could see the sequel, if it had been made, taking kind of three routes. The first being kind of the Men in Black route, like, oh, actually, a whole bunch of aliens live among us. We just happen to discover this one group. We need to do something about it. So I could kind of see it being similar in that sense, like maybe all the actual crime syndicates in the world are secretly aliens and they create some kind of combat against that. The second way I could see it going is maybe just focusing more on actual Buckaroo Banzai instead of and the whole team, but just kind of like focus more on his samurai side and him just going around and finding criminals, kind of vigilante style. Which I mean, he's famous and popular this time, but maybe a prequel to him becoming Buckaroo Banzai in that sense. Or I could see it almost like, I guess it'd be more Alien Predator style, where like a seed of one of those aliens is left, and eventually they come back and take over again, and you have to fight against them. Those are kind of the three routes I could see that movie taking. But of course, I mean that's hindsight, and other films have been made already that have nothing to do with it. But I think it could follow one of those routes if it had been made.
Yeah, I kind of thought about it as something totally different. I kind of thought about it more like Scott Pilgrim versus the World, where it was more of the band actually doing music, and then they were traveling and going to different places, and then they were taking care of the crime bosses at each location. Uh, that was all part of the league syndicate, and then eventually they're going to get to the end and deal with the main boss. So that's just kind of how I saw it. Uh, I don't know what I don't know why my phone decided to stop this. Let me pull it right up back up real quick here. They actually did make a sequel. It was a comic book that you can actually get on Amazon. I just want to read what the description says, and we'll kind of talk about that just for a second. Okay, it says, still mourning the losses of his beloved Penny Priddle and his surrogate father, Professor Hikada. So obviously, two of the characters are dead. Uh, Banzai must also contend with the constant threat of attack from his immortal nemesis, uh, Hainu Zan, ruthless leader of the World Crime League. To make matters worse, Planet 10 warrior queen John Emdahl has sent her Lectroid legions against the Earth with brutal ultimatum. Or is her true target Buckaroo Banzai? As the apocalyptic threat continues to mount, only Buckaroo and his Hong Kong Cavaliers stand in the way of global destruction. So that just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I mean, I'm almost tempted to buy the comic just to read it, but it's like you got two stories. They're trying to mesh two stories together. I mean, if it's against the Crime League Syndicate, don't do anything with Planet 10.
Hmm.
I mean, that's done. It's over. It's out of the way. Just focus on the Crime League. What do y'all think?
Well, and see, I think that's part of my problem with this film in general was it does seem like they create all these storylines, but they don't necessarily do a great job at tying them in well. Because, like I said, and it may have just been the way I watched it. There were several times I didn't get completely lost, but I was like, "What does this have to do with anything about the story?" It's like we just kind of threw stuff in. So, based
Well, I
off of
mean,
that
yeah, let me.
description, it seems similar.
Yeah, think about it. What is Buckaroo Banzai? He's a rock and roll star. He's a gunslinger. He's a brain surgeon. He's a scientist. He is a test car wanting to go to another dimension. I mean, there's no way you could do all that stuff all at the same time. There's no way. So, what do you guys think? Any other final thoughts before we close on out of here?
See, I got one question, and we always ask this, but what would you, if you had to change one thing in it? And I think I would,
Everything.
I
Everything.
would, I would focus more with Bonsai in the band and probably doing going around and working and finally figured out there's aliens there and figured out, oh, John Lithgow's the head of it. I would have changed the premise, but kept it about ending about the same.
Well, I would have gotten rid of Penny completely. There's no reason for
Absolutely.
that at all. I mean, it was just a side thing, and everything dealing with the president was side note. It wasn't needed. I mean, you could say, okay, hey, we've got, I got to talk to the president and have it be really short. Instead of now you have the president coming back and then he has to with the bubble wrap glasses to see it. I mean, it's just some of that just was way. Yeah, I would have
Just way
focused
out there.
more on the band and Buckaroo, and then go from there.
I mean, if I changed anything, I think rather than make this a film, I think this is definitely one of the earlier cases of, well, if you made this a TV show, you could wrap up a lot of these storylines very neatly. And I think that could have worked very well for it. So if I changed anything, I might have actually made it a series, and it probably could have worked well.
Well, yeah, they had talked about it after the series, after they couldn't do they didn't do the. Um, well, let me first back up a little bit. When they did the movie, they actually were supposed to release a backstory comic book series to go with it, and that never happened because of obviously you could see it was a B movie and it wasn't didn't have a lot of budget, so they never released the comics. They didn't release the comics till, I mean, like early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. uh, and then there was talk about making the sequel into a TV series, but the problem was is that there was so much had been released to the public already, and some of the rights weren't all with Warner Brothers. Some of them were with somebody else. So it got really really mixed up. Some international had a right that was not with the same company that had the rights in the United States. So it got really confusing. So that's why, I mean, a lot of times, even today, that's why there's still no sequel whatsoever. I mean, people that make comics and stuff like that, they can go ahead and get away with it. But That's about it. Well, we're at the point here. One, we always got to put our little banners up here to show you guys. We are on Twitter at these Sci-Fi Guys. You can email us at TheseSciFiGuys at gmail.com. And of course, you can find us right here on YouTube at These Sci-Fi Guys. Okay, Chad picked up the movie for next time. Chad, you want to go ahead and tell us what it is?
We're gonna be watching The Matrix. Finally, who's the one?
The One. Oh, yeah. The Matrix was one of the first movies I remember that just defied the laws of physics.
Yeah,
You know?
I
Yeah,
think.
that was such a good movie.
Yeah, I
Keanu
think.
Reeves. I mean, it was funny. I mean, and I'll just mention this here before we go too much further. I mean, I grew up watching Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. All
Yeah.
right, and seeing Keanu Reeves as excellent. You know, seeing him like that, and then going from that to the Matrix was like, what? This guy is pretty cool. He's
And I
pretty
think.
good.
And I think John would like the effects.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
So, with that being said, all right, everyone, we appreciate. Oh, what was Buckaroo's famous line that he did? Uh, Once you're there, or whenever you get there, you're there, or something like that. I can't remember exactly the line to it. All right, peace out, everyone.